Hi, everybody. This is Mrs. Martin, and today I'm going to be taking you through a bit of our speculative fiction notes, as well as the concept of illusion and the story Catching Cold. A couple of things I want you to keep in mind is that if you have not watched the video Literary Devices Illusions on YouTube, that should be in your Google Classroom. Please stop now before you listen to the rest of this and go watch that video. The video does a really good job of explaining what an illusion is and gives you some terrific examples from Disney. The video is only 5 minutes long, so you can pause this, jump over there, watch that, and jump right back in. Okay. This video is actually going to be conducted in several parts because the story has several parts. Also, because of file size, in order to load it to Google Classroom, we can only record so long before we have to pause. So this is video 1 in the series for Catching Cold. So this week's packet looks an awful lot like the What If packets for the past 2 weeks. And if you've not stopped to look at the genre notes, that's the first thing we're going to do here today. So our genre notes talk about speculative fiction. Speculative fiction is a very big umbrella that refers to a lot of different stories, but they all have one thing in common. They're stories that are considered unrealistic or unlikely to happen in real life. That means anything that seems so completely strange and out of the ordinary that it could never happen to you, that would be considered a speculative story. Now, within speculative fiction, there are a lot of other little subgenres and categories, but some of the ones listed below are ones that you'll be familiar with. So anytime you read a story that is set in the future, that is a speculative fiction story because the future can't be known. Anytime you read a story that takes place in the historic past but contradicts or goes against the actual facts of history, that's considered a speculative fiction story. So, for example, if you're reading a book about the American Revolution and the author explores, well, what if the Americans didn't win the revolution and the British did? Well, that would be considered an alternate world or alternate history story, and it's speculative fiction. All stories set on other worlds because we've never gone there. So if your story takes place on another planet or in another part of the galaxy, that would be a speculative fiction story. All stories that are set on Earth but before recorded history and contradicting or going against the known scientific facts. So what we're talking about are stories about ancient aliens, maybe ancient lost civilizations like the lost city of Atlantis. Those would be speculative fiction because the authors created them by speculating, well, what was the world like before recorded history? All stories that contradict or go against some known or accepted law of nature. So stories that deal with the use of magic, like your Harry Potter stories. Stories that deal with time travel. Yes, I know time travel theoretically can happen, but hasn't happened yet, and it's not something our scientists have been able to figure out for practical use. So, as far as we're concerned right now, it would still fall under speculative fiction. Another category that fits under speculative fiction is the idea of science fiction. So science fiction is usually based on current or anticipated scientific and technological developments. So anybody who's a fan of Star Trek, you're familiar with science fiction. Fantasy fiction, another subcategory underneath speculative fiction, is any kind of writing that takes place in imaginary worlds. So if you are a fan of the Lord of the Rings trilogy or the C.S. Lewis books like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, things that involve witchcraft, wizardry, supernatural acts and powers, creatures and entities that don't exist in real life, those are all fantasy fiction. Then we take a look at two genres that are very closely tied together, utopian and dystopian fiction. Utopian fiction is a writing in which the author has created a perfect world as the setting. And all of our current societal problems have been solved. The characters live in an ideal environment. Now, we've discussed the idea that every story needs a conflict or a problem. So very often, a story may start off utopian with the characters thinking their world is ideal and perfect in every way. Something like Lois Lowry's The Giver, where the characters think, yep, we live in a great society. And then as the characters evolve and grow and learn and dig a little deeper, they discover they're actually living in a dystopian story, a world where there are horrible circumstances going on, and there are issues of crime and poverty and hunger and oppression that are existing. So if you've read The Hunger Games, Divergent, the Ugly series, as I said, the Giver series, all of these are that wonderful blend of utopian and dystopian fiction, both of which are designed to make a point about the reality we live in today. So this is the end of audio clip 1. You can stop here, grab a drink, grab a snack, come on back, and we will begin our story for the week, which is Catching Cold.